Okay, good afternoon, class. Wanted to check in with you. Yes, we will not have class on Monday. I'm going to be traveling to Washington, D.C., and so I think the best thing for us to do is to do an online class, and so I'm going to start off with a video. So what I want to do for this video and what I want to do for this week's assignment is I really want you to think about education. So I want to tell you a real quick story, and then I want to give you an opportunity to go online and talk about your story as well. So one of the most important things, I think, to education and educators is the moment that brought you into education. We've talked all the time about how education is a calling, and people are brought to it for one reason or another throughout their lifetimes. And so I have a couple of stories that I like to share, but I'm just going to share one. One is related to when I think I became an administrator and really decided that day that I am truly an administrator, but I'll share that story later. But I want to tell the story about when I decided to go into education. I was a junior in high school, and like a lot of high school kids, probably just kicking around, what am I going to do, where am I going to go, college, what's going to be the future for me, and I hadn't really decided. And sure, obviously, I'd spent all my life in schools, and that was pretty much all I knew. The one thing I did know is that I loved history. I enjoyed history. I was always good in history class. I always enjoyed learning about presidents and state capitals and things like that. And, I was a relatively patriotic kid, so I enjoyed that growing up. But one day, I was watching something on cable TV, History Channel or something, and I just came across it, flipping channels like I normally would at the time, and I came across a discussion and information about World War II. And it was, kind of an overview of the tragedies of World War II and the concentration camps and Adolf Hitler, invading Poland and the destruction and dropping the atomic bomb and the millions of people who were suffering and died and as a result of the war. And I just sat mesmerized by it. I sat just taken by the information, and it affected me in a strange way. That you've got all of these terrible leaders, Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini, and the world was just in a terrible place, and so many people were affected and displaced from their homes, and cities were destroyed, and people fought to protect what was theirs in their country, and it was a terrible war and a terrible time in our world's history. And I sat mesmerized by it and taken by it, and I felt a true calling. I felt like this is a story that needs to be shared. This is information that my generation probably doesn't understand. And I'm probably 16 years old at this time. And I'm realizing at that age that we've got to continue the preservation of history. We've got to continue sharing these horrible things because it can't happen again. I don't want nuclear war. I don't want my city and hometown destroyed by bombs and bombings and terrible things. I don't want foreign nations marching into my major city and taking it over. And I don't want walls built around where I live and keeping me separated from my loved ones. That's what World War II was. And for me, it felt like this is information that we have got to get into the hands of people so that we understand the value of life, we understand the value of the planet, we understand the value of our people as earthlings. And so at that moment, I decided I'm going to be a teacher. And I'm going to make it a mission of mine to go into classrooms and try to get students to understand what has happened in the past and the mistakes that mankind has made and the mistakes that humans have made, and how we can learn from those mistakes and try to make life better. So I became a teacher, and I knew from the moment that I walked on campus at Baylor University that August day in 1994 that I was going to be a teacher. And so I've dedicated my life to education ever since. And so for that, that's my story. So I want to hear from you. I want your story. What brought you to education? What made you decide that education was right for you?